All right, so the Masters wasn't exactly a classic.
No.
However, you could call it a clinic. Scotty Scheffler blowing away the field. Now a Masters champion, 14 days after ascending to world number one. Don't be fooled by that 4-putt there on 18. He could have 6-putt the stinking hole and still won the thing. And some say he's the most 45-year-old looking 25-year-old ever.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was flabbergasted when I found out that he was 25.
I know. He really conducts himself like an older, seasoned veteran.
Yeah, absolutely. But I actually texted you yesterday.
We were texting
I was
back
like,
and forth.
Is Scotty Scheffler, why is he winning so handily? I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, so let's see what our gorgeous golf gurus think here.
Yeah.
DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and Reti Fowler are here as well. I mean, like, really, when we were texting, I was like, yeah, so, like, Scotty's doing his thing, but really no one else wanted to, like, win it. And then Rory Reed, like, saves it for Sunday. Like, his best round. It's like, bro, play like this, like, the few days leading up, and you could win this stinking thing. And then Jeff's pissed because he doesn't know how to play the par fives either.
Yeah, the text thread between us three is not safe for work. So we won't disclose what we were talking about. But yeah, I mean, Scotty Scheffler could, do his best Emerson impression like on Sunday and 6-putt the final hole, and he still would have won. That's what's so great about Scotty Scheffler. And yes, he's extremely old looking for how young he is, but he's extremely mature. I mean, you can see it in 4 of the last 6 events. And Rory, the complaint's always going to be there for Rory, right? Do it on Thursday and Friday. Why do you look like the best golfer rounds 2 through 4, but on Thursday at the majors, it's piss poor, right? Like that's what's happening with Rory, is that if he just did mediocre on Thursday, he would have been in the hunt, right? And that would have been a lot different. Let's say Rory was in the final group as opposed to 2 or 3 back. So look, for Rory, it's another fantastic finish. This is not a backdoor top 10. He really got after it on Sunday, but you got to get up for Scotty Scheffler. For the last 6 events, this is historic. Only one other player who's won a WGC and 4 events coming into the Masters, other than Scotty Scheffler, is Tiger Woods.
Crazy, dude. Like, Jeff, on Super Bowl Sunday, Scheffler hadn't won a single PGA Tour event. Now he has 4 in his last 6 starts. It's like Reed just sped off some of his wins there. Like, who saw this coming, Ulrich?
I mean, yeah, look, we could just like talk about this the whole show. I mean, like nobody saw it coming. People were comparing Scotty Scheffler at the start of the year to like Tony Finau. Like, when is he going to win? Never. He's never going to win because he gets in contention and then he doesn't close. It just shows how fast things can change. And the Masters it essentially boiled down. It was a microcosm of the first 3 months of the year. Who did we see in contention? Cam Smith, Scotty Scheffler, Joaquin Niemann was up there for a bit. He's been good. Rory's been okay, so he's up there for a bit too. Made a nice little run.
Shane Lowry, yeah.
Shane Lowry's been playing well. But those are the players who've already been playing well. It was just like, those were the guys. They've been playing well. They came here and they dominated Augusta. And the names who were cold, like nobody popped up. Nobody made a run. DJ was up there for a bit, but he's been inconsistent. So it's really one of those Masters where, nothing really that unsurprising happened. The guys who were playing good played good. And the guys who continued, like who weren't playing that good or have struggled with consistency, they still continued to struggle. So, we're only a month away from the next major championship. Some of these dudes really need to like kick it into gear here. So it's going to be interesting to see if anything changes over the next few events, because I mean, again, like we would not put it past Scotty Scheffler or maybe Cam Smith to just keep things rolling for another month.
Yeah, and Jeff, if you look at like the top 10 in like who finished, look at those odds of the guys who finished in the top 10. All of them were like 6 of the top 10 were probably under 3,500, right? So you take a look at that. Like 3 of the top 4 were close to plus 2,000.
I mean, there was really most Masters we get some kind of surprising thing. Like even last year, Hideki, he was coming in with like 2 missed cuts in his last 5 starts. That was surprising in itself. We know he's a quality player, but were people expecting to make the jump? Not really, because he was 40-1. So we just got nothing like that this Masters. It was just continued domination by the players who were already dominating.
And then you heard like the story afterwards when Scheffler was making himself available to the media. He mentioned how he cried like a baby that Sunday morning, like to his wife, because he didn't think that he could like close it out. So good for him going out.
Grew up a little.
Yeah, good. I mean, good.
It's amazing how composed he is. I mean, we joke about how he looks today, but he really does seem like someone who's very comfortable with who he is, and it just shows on the golf course, right? I mean, he never really looks rattled, even when Cam Smith was breathing down his neck, when Rory was climbing up the leaderboard. What did he do? He just hit it to 5 feet. Like, it's pretty impressive. And, for him to only be 25 right now, I mean, he is going to be around for a while contending in these events.
No, it's crazy. Scotty Scheffler got married in 2020, and he's 25, so that means he got married when he was 23.
The math would check out there. Yeah,
So
good job with that.
They were basically children. Crazy, but they seem great. Okay, so after nearly 17 months away from golf,
this
was
is
the other
story.
the big story of the Masters. Dude nearly lost his life, nearly lost his leg. Like, what'd you learn about Tiger, Reed? Like, going out there, I mean, there were times where we saw him kind of like using the driver as like almost like a cane a little bit.
Yeah, he's like Willy Wonka.
Yeah, like Willy Wonka. But obviously the determination, I mean, the will to get out there and play and compete. Like, what'd you learn about him, Reed? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you say about Tiger, right? The superlatives run out with what he's able to do. I mean, the beginning of the tournament in round one, we said Tiger played better than X amount of guys. Like, Tiger made the cut, right? Over a lot of guys that were playing much better who had wins this season, he made the cut, right? And you take a look Bryson DeChambeau. We love him at DraftKings. He's one of us, sort of. But look, he's been off of golf for a month, 5 weeks, whatever it's been, and his game is like nowhere to be found, shooting 80 on Friday. Tiger's out for 500 days, right, from competitive golf, almost loses his life in his leg. And what does he do? He comes out and he shoots what he did, over the first couple of days. Now, granted, leg fatigue was always a thing that I was looking at. And especially when he was walking to the clubhouse after Sunday, he was really laboring. But what you learn about Tiger is that A, he's going to play St. Andrews, which we already knew. Yep. He already mentioned it in the Sky Sports interview. But B, he's probably going to be gearing up for these tournaments like the majors. And we don't necessarily need to see Tiger go T10, T8 in the previous 2 run-up tournaments. He can be absolutely out of golf and come in and be competitive. Now, can he win? That's another story. But you just learn that this guy is more machine than he is man. Yeah,
and that's a good segue there, Reed, because, Jeff, I wanted to ask you, how far off do you think he is from winning a tournament or even a major? PGA Championship is at Southern Hills in Tulsa here in mid-May coming up, and he won there in 2007.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really just comes down to competitive practice and competitive conditioning. Reed mentioned, he's laboring at the end of it. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, it's his first full competitive golf event, and it's like the hilliest course on tour. So, of course, it's going to be fatigued, and it'll probably be a factor even in his next couple starts. But, towards the end of the summer, we do have an Open Championship at St. Andrews. It's quite frankly, it's an easier walk. Yeah, the weather can get a little bit difficult there at times, but it's a far easier walk. And I think that's kind of the time frame I would be looking at Tiger. I mean, I'm not like putting him down for a favorite at St. Andrews, but if he gets in the mix there and he starts showing signs that like he can actually, hold it together for 4 rounds, it wouldn't shock me at all. So I think we're a few months away from really seeing like Tiger like reach his peak again, whatever his peak is at this point in his career. But just the fact that he's back and looks to be focusing on these big events again, I mean, it's awesome. And I think that you will see again, you will see him compete in these majors again, like compete for a title, actually be in the mix on Sunday at some point. I think the Open Championship represents his best shot going forward, but I mean, I wouldn't put past him at any of these. If he gets, really good conditioning back and his leg stays good, okay, I mean, it's Tiger, so anything's possible.
Yeah, and it's clear that Augusta National is the one place, right, where he can rack up the majors because of what he just did.
100%.
And what he's done in the past.
100%.
All right, guys, as for this week, because we got to stop talking about the Masters now that it's over. Really sad.
Yeah, little Monday morning quarterback.
The tour takes its talents to Hilton Head, right? For the RBC Heritage Classic. Now, Cam Smith was the second hottest golfer on the planet before blowing his chances for a green jacket on Sunday.
Yeah, triple on 12.
You
Thanks
do
a lot,
hate
bud.
to see it.
I could have won $10.
Yeah, you could have had that $10. So how much do you like him to rebound this week, Jeff? He's plus 1,600 on the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is one of those spots where, fading Cam Smith, I did it last week and other people did. It didn't really work out for us in DFS. But at the same time, hitting it in the creek on 12, it's typically one of those things where people do it and it takes them a while to recover. And I don't think it's going to bring a halt to Cam Smith's career or anything, but he is kind of a player who's maybe just due to cool off a little bit. I mean, he's missing a ton of fairways. And at some point, like that's going to catch up to you in the form of like just some bad finishes, because you can't just keep gaining like 3-4 strokes putting and around the greens every week. So Cam Smith is a brilliant young player. He's definitely one of my favorite. He's unique to the modern game in a lot of ways, just because he's not a robot off the tee. But I would pick him to kind of cool off here. I'm not really bullish on him for this week. It was his only start since the Players last week. He showed some signs of rust down the stretch. I think you see a little bit more rust and maybe just him cooling off again, just from a performance perspective. Again, it's a great start to the season, but it's kind of a fade again for me this week.
Reed, do you want to fade Cam Smith here?
Yeah, I was in that camp that faded Cam Smith last week, and look what happened, right? He's been fantastic with the short game, but like Jeff just alluded to, the miss left off the tee is not a good miss for these pros. When they hit it right to left for the right-handers, right? When they hook the ball off the tee, that's just not a good miss. That's exactly the opposite of what they want to do. They're usually faders of the ball because they can keep it in the center of the fairway, or they can control the distance. Having said that, Cam Smith has been fantastic around the greens, fantastic putting, and his short game is top notch. It's number one on the PGA Tour, and that's kind of what you need here. You need approaches, and Cam Smith gained a ton with his approaches, and we know how good of a putter he is. This was kind of the same as Scotty Scheffler last week, where I was saying, hey, look, Scotty Scheffler is the most expensive guy, on DraftKings and DFS. Why not chase him because of what he's done? And it worked out. I kind of feel the same way about Cam Smith, is that we all saw him give us a letdown on 12, but this guy is one of the hottest golfers on tour right now. Like, he is unbelievable. What he did at TPC Sawgrass, gaining over, 10, 11 strokes putting, that is amazing. So I probably faded him in terms of the outright market because what we see, who wins at this tournament. But DFS, I can get behind it.
I think after Rory's epic round yesterday, Colin Morikawa, I think Reed had the second best score on Sunday. He and Rory matching those epic holeouts from the bunker to wrap up the round. So, are you chasing Colin at Harbor Town?
Probably not. I mean, whenever you fade Colin, it's a fool's errand. But I think this tournament, you take a look, and my article's coming on a little bit, shameless plug, but you look at some of the guys on the DF on who's top 6, top 10 in terms of DraftKings scoring, and a ton come from, below $8,000. A lot come from $7,500 and below. So yes, you can roster, and I'm sure when the prices come out, Morikawa is going to be one of the most expensive guys. You can go stars and scrubs, but I'm probably going to stay away from Morikawa because of what he did on Sunday. Cam Smith, you usually see that after he plays well in a tournament, he doesn't do well. I'm kind of thinking the same thing for Morikawa just a little bit because he played tough and he played well, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a letdown for Morikawa. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins this thing because he's that good, but I'm going to fade him, which is probably the wrong decision.
Okay, at least you admit it. It's all good. Jeff, I saw you tweet out too, the winner of the RBC has played in the Masters in 6 of the last 8 runnings of this event. Colin obviously just played in the Masters. You like his chances to win this week?
Yeah, and just to build off that, I mean, we have had 3 of those winners miss the cut at the Masters too, so you don't need to fade everybody who played poorly last week. But we also had players like Stuart Sink, who was T12 at the Masters last year, come in and win. For DFS purposes, I'm not betting either Justin Thomas or Colin Morikawa. I just think that this event, this course, it's a little bit too quirky. It brings in more of the field because it's a little bit shorter, so it's a better event to target guys in the mid range for your outright bets. But for DFS, I think you've got to make a decision between Thomas and Morikawa. I would slightly lean Thomas. I do like the way Morikawa finished yesterday, but I think Thomas has the more refined short game. He's been really good on Pete Dye tracks. We know that he's obviously got a win at TPC Sawgrass. So if it's a little bit tougher track, a little bit more, maybe higher scoring event, I think I may consider Morikawa more. It's really close between these two, but Thomas has been the better of them again over the 4 months. And we just finished talking about how important momentum can be. So I would slightly lean Justin Thomas over Morikawa this week, but it's nice to see Morikawa's game starting to get primed because, we need some people to challenge Scheffler at the PGA in a month. And hopefully Colin is one of those players.
Scotty Scheffler did some more research while we were sitting here and found out that he and his wife...
He's still 25?
He's still 25, but he and his wife are high school sweethearts. So that does maybe explain...
Dude, can you get more wholesome than Scotty Scheffler?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
That's what I'm saying. So, it does also kind of explain why he got married at 23. They'd already been together for 7 years. So.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him.
Good for him.
And congrats to him on his green jacket.
Yep.
Amazing
nice
stuff. You two, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, dudes.
We got to talk NBA playoffs next. We're going to do that with Julian Edlow, so stick around. We
right.
are taking a look at the NBA playoff seeding.
Indeed. At least 1 through 6 are locked in. We know like you have the play-in tournaments, so like 7 and 8 are still up in the air right now.
Right. We're going to talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah,
tomorrow
that's going to be mainly tomorrow. Was that a sneeze or a hiccup?
I don't know. I think it was a burp,
Okay.
actually.
All right. I just hope you're okay. I'm worried. I didn't know if the baby was coming. The only team that actually moved, changed position in the standings yesterday was the Celtics with their win. So they're up to the 2. Who knows? They could be on a collision course with the Nets right now, which would be kind of wild.
Pretty crazy.
With Kyrie back in the building.
To talk more about all this, let's bring in DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow, who had an absolutely incredible dinner this weekend that included some delectable-looking crab claws.
Yeah, anyone hungry?
Not Glash, apparently. He just wants to keep eating cheese and crackers like a 2-year-old.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to
Poor
talk
guy.
NBA playoff futures. So we want to kind of get your reaction to the playoff seeding from a sportsbook perspective. Like I said, we are going to save the playing games for tomorrow, so don't worry about that right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the seeding set, dude, like which of these first round matchups like are you most looking forward to?
I think there's a lot of interesting ones on the board. Like you go to the West, and we have this Jazz Mavericks series where Dallas it was like a 3-point favorite at home, but Doncic got hurt in that season finale. It sounds like he's going to be okay, but now Dallas is a home dog in that one. Utah is favored in the series. It's not a series that I have as much of an opinion on, but I think it's going to be a very close series that the moving price and the status of Doncic just creates a lot of interest, I think, leading up to Saturday. It's the first playoff game to tip, too. I think Philly-Toronto is really interesting. Philly loaded up. They better win with Embiid and Harden. But Toronto is on fire. Not everybody with Philly is necessarily vaccinated, so some of them can't play in those games in Toronto. Matisse Thybulle, it sounds like. I think Toronto could sneak out that series, and that would be an awful look for the Sixers if it does wind up going that way. And then I know we're going to save the play-in games, but we know who the 7 seed's going to be. The Nets are winning tomorrow night, and they're going to play the Celtics. Last year, the Nets were the 2, the Celtics were the 7. This year, the Celtics are going to be the 2, Brooklyn's going to be the 7, and we're going to get a rematch of that series with the Celtics fully healthy. Jaylen Brown didn't play. I'm very curious to see what the series price there is going to look like.
Jules, did any team get kind of like unlucky with their seeding? Do they have a tough matchup for them in the first round?
Well, the Celtics kind of got unlucky with their seeding by their own doing. Milwaukee clearly tanked yesterday against Cleveland and tried to drop down. And the Celtics said, whatever, we're still going to go for it. And, dominated Memphis, moved up to the 2 seed. So they did it to themselves, and they're almost certainly going to get Brooklyn here. The Nets are minus 400 on the money line tomorrow night. So we've been talking for a while, which one of these teams, the top 4 in the East, are going to wind up drawing Brooklyn. And it looks like it's going to be Boston almost by their own decision. So the Celtics better win that series, or they're going to get some, they're going to hear it there. There's going to be some repercussions.
Yo, which team's path to the finals do you like the best?
I mean, the Suns probably in the West, just because they're that much better than everybody else. I think that Clippers-Wolves game is huge because if you win it, I know everybody loves Memphis, but you get Memphis in the first round rather than Phoenix. That's a huge win. So that's a big game, that 7-seed West play-in game. Just the East is tough. Those top 4 teams can all beat up on each other very good. Toronto is a threat. Brooklyn's obviously a huge wild card coming out of the play-in round. There's, 5 teams that can come out of the East, and that's going to create a tough path. So I just think Phoenix, being far and away the best team in the West, we'll see if Golden State can be healthy, but it's hard not to like their path the most.
Yeah, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Miami path to the NBA Finals, too, would be like, that's ridiculous for the Celtics. It could be real tough.
Yeah, Jules, any lower-seeded team that you could see pulling an upset here?
Let me see. So, I guess, does Brooklyn count?
Yeah, 100%.
Sure does.
You mentioned the Raptors. You could see the Raptors coming out of that series with the 76ers. Brooklyn, I think people would consider maybe the most dangerous 7 seed in the history of the league.
So,
it could end up being an 8.
So if Brooklyn is favored on the series line against the Celtics, which they very well might be, like, I'll bet the Celtics. So I'll bet there's your, let's forget the word lower seed. Let's take upset. If on the price, the Celtics are an upset, they're plus money, I will take them because I think defensively they'll give Brooklyn problems even without Rob Williams. But yeah, I think Toronto is a team to watch out for against Philly. And then the biggest sleeper, I think that if either team that wins that 7 play-in game, I think is live against Memphis. I know Memphis has been awesome, but they need to watch out, especially if it's the Clippers. And I do like the Clippers in that game. If the Clippers draw Memphis, and Kawhi Leonard maybe could come back sometime in the playoffs, so they have reason to play and try and go deep and challenge them. I think that the 7 seed in the West is a team that could be live at some big plus money against Memphis.
What about a team's seeding or matchup? Which one kind of makes you rethink their conference or their final odds? I still can't believe that, like, the Nets still have the second best odds to win the Eastern Conference. They still have the third best odds to win an NBA title this season.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way that they don't make it through the play-in round. So they're kind of priced for that. They're almost certainly going to beat Cleveland in that first home game tomorrow night. If they don't, they get to fall back on that with another home game against the Hawks or Hornets. So I think we're just kind of grading it as pretty much putting them through. And then, you're paying for the talent. You're paying a big premium on the talent. And you can tell right there on the conference winner price that Brooklyn's going to be favored over Boston because they already have the shorter odds right there to win it all. So that's going to be really interesting. Another team that I think just everybody kind of wanted to get on Denver all year. Jokic is probably the MVP. They were kind of thinking maybe Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. would come back at some point in time, and they're not. I think that Denver is just all Jokic and nothing else. They're not a very good team with one really good player. Now, the interesting thing is they get Golden State, and we don't even know how healthy Curry is. But if Golden State is going to have Curry at all or look anything close to what they've looked like in the past, I think that's a series that they can make pretty quick work of Denver just because of how bad the rest of the team around Jokic is.
All right, good stuff, Jules. We'll talk to you about playing games.
Yeah, tomorrow. Are you going to be here? Are you going to join us tomorrow?
I can't wait. I'm going to join you guys tomorrow.
Wow.
All right, awesome. I'm super stoked too.
Yeah,
look how excited we are.
Very exciting. But we got to talk MLB. That's going to be coming up next. The Sweat will be right back.
All right, we're back here on the Sweats. I'm Emerson Lazzi. She's Jesse Cofield. We've done the Masters thing, the RBC Heritage thing. We just did some NBA futures with Jules, and right now we're going to talk about some baseball because opening weekend is now a thing of the past. We got a couple dudes here to help us out.
Yep.
DraftKings contributor, Mr. Nick Fryer, RotoWire's Eric Halterman. Good to see you guys. And I do understand that it's like a little early, but what was your biggest takeaway from this past weekend, Fryer? Like, was there a team that stood out to you for a good reason? Was there a team that you're just like, that was disgusting?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Mets, I know they're going up against the Nationals, and we don't really expect a whole heck of a lot from them this season. I mean, the Mets went 3-1. It's kind of a big deal for them. The thing that I find funny, too, is like Buck Showalter. We've seen him turn around organizations before where they've kind of been struggling. It's happened to him quite a few times in the past, and then in some of those instances, that team has gone on to experience even more success after he leaves. So I'm wondering if this is going to be like the perfect marriage between him and the Mets, and maybe they actually get it together. Not necessarily this year, but at some point. And I do like seeing kind of what happened with them over the weekend, where the Nationals were hitting too many of their guys and they clapped back pretty hard, led by Showalter in that effort. The other one too is the West Coast Yankees went 1-2 against the Rockies this to open things up. So love seeing that.
Dude, also like Eric, like Major League Baseball's bad teams, they're like really bad. Arizona and then what Baltimore did against the Rays, like two disgusting performances.
Yeah, I don't think the Orioles really ever win games against the Rays, though.
Yeah.
So probably shouldn't have surprised us there, but they may be on pace for definitely one of the lowest win totals we've seen, given how good the rest of that division is. The main thing I guess we can do is adjust the Guardians win total up to about 3,000, maybe 4,000, because they've got apparently the second coming of Tony Gwynn on their team and Stephen Kwan. But on a more serious note, maybe it's the Padres are the more impressive.
Yeah.
Not based on performance, just because they added a couple key pieces right before the start of the season. Sean Manaea, who they got, I think it was the Sunday before opening day, really adds another frontline starter to that rotation. They got a ton of depth there. And Taylor Rogers giving them a true closer. They had like 5 guys who I could have seen closing for a bad team, but they all looked maybe a little overmatched as the closer for a contender. With Rogers there, they have a very solid closer. So they, one way to get better is just to add 2 very key pieces. I think that matters a lot more than performances over the first 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, I also noticed their home run chain was missing this past weekend for San Diego, which they could have swept that series if it wasn't for the walk-off against Arizona. I think it was that Friday night or something, Thursday night.
All right, well, let's get to today. How about that?
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds good.
So, Eric, who's your favorite DFS pitcher for today? You got Adrian Hauser out here. Hauser's like okay, but the Orioles are really bad.
Yep.
Yeah, he's not always the best fantasy guy because he's not a great strikeout guy, but anybody against the Orioles has a very good chance for a win. So I think he's a fine play, but my favorite play would be Huascar Ynoa at 8,600 against the Nationals. Nationals don't scare me at all outside of Juan Soto and Nelson Cruz. I guess there's Josh Bell. Maybe you're a Keeper Ruiz fan, but there's not a lot there. I think it's one of the easier matchups a pitcher can have. Ynoa, he threw 4 2/3 in his final spring tune-up, so I think no concerns about his workload heading into his first start of the year. And I'm fully buying into his age 23 breakout last year. He had a 4.05 ERA, but a lot of the ERA estimators had him even down in the mid-3s, and I think he could end up there this season. Really just impressed across the board. Strikeout rate close to 27%, walk rate under 7%, and his ground ball rate in the high 40s. So it was this across the board, just solidly better than average in pretty much every way you want to see from a pitcher. I'm buying in, especially against opponents like the Nationals.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, you're looking at the slate. Who's your favorite DFS pitcher for today?
Yeah, I don't like a lot of the pitching options that we have today, but I do like Huascar Ynoa going up against the Nationals. Because when you look at what the Mets did against the Nationals last series, every starter that they trotted out averaged at least 1 strikeout per inning. 100 Ks, 91 innings last season, and he averaged over at least 1 K per inning in 2/3 of his 21 starts. And look, this lineup too, this Nationals lineup hasn't seen a lot of Ynoa. Some of the guys have a little bit, but that's always going to play an advantage of a pitcher because now the hitters don't know what their routine is as much as you go and scout them. The other guy, if you're looking for another option too, Eliseo Hernandez at 7.5K going up against the Angels after the way things went with Houston this weekend. Quite a bit of strikeouts for the Angels too, so another guy who you can go and actually pair together.
All right, Nick, talk to me about best DFS bat like you need in your lineup tonight. We're just talking the main slate tonight, 7 o'clock. I know there's like 4 games in the afternoon, but we'll just focus on those late ones.
Right, of course. So when I'm looking at this one, you guys know that I like looking at matchups, and sometimes, you can read into it. I can read into it a little bit too much. I usually do it more with value plays, but when I see one guy has 11 plate appearances and 5 home runs against one pitcher, I have to back that guy in some capacity. And that's the situation we're looking at with Kyle Schwarber tonight going up against Taijuan Walker. I know he hit a home run in his first game, and I think he had another hit, but hasn't done anything since. Okay, so a little bit of a cold spell, minor one. And now he's going up against a guy who he has mashed throughout the course of his career. I have to go with this one. I also love his total bases over prop too. It's at plus 120 right now on DK Sportsbook.
What do you want to do here, Eric?
Well, can I just copy my notes from Friday and say we've got Ozzie Albies going against a lefty?
Have at it.
Ozzie Albies when he faces a lefty. On Friday, he costs 500 more. He's only 4,800 today. His OPS is almost 200 points higher against lefties than righties for his career. And it was about that same mark last year, so no sign of that changing. And it's really his strikeout rate. He struck out over 20% of the time against righties for his career and less than 14% of the time against lefties. And he's got a particularly easy lefty in Josh Rogers that he's facing off against here. Had a 3.28 ERA in 6 starts last season, but that's not supported at all by the ERA estimators. They're in the high 5s, even as high as 6 in terms of xFIP. He didn't strike out anybody, 14.6% strikeout rate last season. He walked a few too many guys, and he really didn't keep the ball on the ground. A ground ball rate under 30% is about as low as you're going to see. Very rare to see that number start with a 2. So very good chance that Albies could hit a homer tonight.
Okay.
All right, good stuff. How about some value, guys?
Yeah,
Eric, where are you looking for value on this DFS slate?
Let's go Julio Rodriguez. He still costs the minimum because he hasn't gotten off to a very good start. 1 for 12 with 6 strikeouts through his first 3 games. Isn't promising, but this is the kind of guy that we were thinking would be, a $4,500 kind of player. I mean, he's got that kind of potential. Maybe not in his rookie season, but I'd still probably pay $3,000, $3,500 for him. And I would be not at all surprised if he's up in the 4,000s sooner or later. He's got a pretty easy matchup here, too, against Dylan Bundy, who's coming off a pretty poor season. So even though he's shown me nothing yet, maybe if the price had risen and he'd shown me nothing, I'd be off. But if I can get a guy this talented for the absolute minimum, that's the kind of bet I'd like to take.
All right, talk to me about some value here, Nick.
Yeah, Will Myers at 3.1K. I think it's pretty deserving. He hasn't done a whole heck of a lot to start the season, but going up against the Giants, going up against Alex Wood, this is a guy who he has seen a lot throughout the course of his career. 294 average, 400 OPS, not a ton, no extra base hits, so not a lot of power. But we do know that he hits for power well for power against left-handed pitching. I know last season was a little bit of a dip in ISO for him against left-handed pitching at 1.78, but from 2016 to 2020, he always had an ISO against lefties of 200 or better. So I like him in this matchup a lot. It's a guy who he's seen a lot, who he's hit for well, at least for average against, and now he's due for some power too.
What about, let's go to the DK Sportsbook here. Nick, which game do you think is going to go over its run total? Only one in double digits currently, Rockies and Rangers.
Yeah, so if we're looking at the entire slate,
Yeah.
my favorite overall run total, outside of the the main DFS slate, Pirates Cardinals over 8 runs.
Okay.
In that one, I know it's one of the earlier games, but there's been at least 8 runs scored in each game of this series so far, and we're now on the 4th pitchers for each team. I know Zach Thompson had a solid year last year, and Dakota Hudson has been solid throughout the course of his career, but I think Cardinals offense has been busy. Hudson didn't have the greatest spring. So I like the over on that total. If we're going back to that main DFS slate, the later games, the Jays over 4.5 runs against the Yankees. Taillon, Yankee Stadium. I think that's an easy one for me. And then if you like the first 5 innings kind of bets, which I tend to like those, Rangers over 2.5 runs in that one. They've hit the over in the first 3 games so far, and I see no reason they can't do that again tonight.
Eric, which run total are you most confident in betting the over?
I think it's A's at Rays over 8.5. It's tied for the second lowest on the slate, and the Rays are going to have to do the majority of the work here, but I think they can against Paul Blackburn. Had a 5.87 ERA last year, and that seemed to be pretty real. For his career, he's at 5.74. He doesn't walk guys, and he keeps the ball on the ground, but he really doesn't strike out anybody. His career strikeout rate is 12.8%. So I think the Rays will be getting plenty of hits here. On their side, they've got Luis Patino on the mound, who is a promising young pitcher. But for one, I'm worried about how deep he'll go into this game. He had a sore shoulder at the start of spring. So there's very strong odds that he is eased into the regular season, given that the Rays like to do that kind of thing anyway with their young pitchers. And he's, again, a talented young 22-year-old, but he hasn't shown all that much of that potential just yet. 4.31 ERA last year was nothing special. And some of the ERA estimators were even worse than that. Average-ish strikeout and walk rates, but really doesn't keep the ball on the ground, just about 30% ground ball rate there. So while I think the Rays will have to do most of the work here, I don't think he's completely shutting down even an offense as weak as the A's. So I think 8.5 with these 2 pitchers is just too low.
All right, Eric, before we let you go, hit us with your favorite run line or money line bet.
Yeah, I think it's Blue Jays plus 105 over the Yankees. I'm not sure why the Yankees are favored here. I guess they're home. It should be close, but given the pitching matchup, I think I'd take Alec Manoa over Jameson Taillon. Manoa had a 3.22 ERA last season, maybe a little bit better than the ERA estimators, but he's a good pitcher, mostly in the strikeout rate, which was at 27.7% last season. Taillon on the other side, 4.30 ERA. That actually slightly beat some of the ERA estimators. He was average-ish in strikeouts, didn't walk too many guys, but didn't keep the ball on the ground well, which could be a problem at Yankee Stadium, especially against a lineup as good as the Blue Jays. I'd say these lineups are pretty close to a wash, so all of my Blue Jays lean here comes from Manoa. The Yankees may have a worse lineup later in the season, but their main weakness is injuries, which hasn't shown up yet. But even if we call that a wash, I think with Manoa over Taillon, I think it should be, if anything, a slight favor to the Blue Jays.
All right, Nick, where are you going for your favorite run line or money line bet?
Yeah, Eric and I are in lockstep on this one, and I'm just so anti-Taillon, and I don't think that I'm in the minority at all with that one. I think if you want to double up on this too, Jay's first 5 innings, money line 2, I think is also a worthwhile bet if you want to take the bullpens out of it, because I do think that is one little bit of a concern with the Jays, and that'd be the only reason I would think coming into this one that they would be the underdog, because they got a little bit of extra work in their first series. But I still like the Jays money line straight up too in this one. I like that offense more, and Manoa is just, I think, a far superior pitcher than Taillon. Coming off a solid spring, I know it only means so much, but still, I like him a lot more than Taillon. I just think he's going to get hit around pretty hard.
Dudes, that is all the time we have. I appreciate you answering all of our questions that we had. Producer Drew wrote up for you.
Yes.
So we're going to do NHL. Paul Bruno's here rolling solo once again right after this quick break.
Welcome back to The Sweat. Jesse Covey alongside Emerson Latzia. We are sweating out here.
We're about to sweat out a ginormous slate around the NHL tonight. There is just there is one game.
Just
we have
one game.
We have one game here. We have one man here to talk about this one game, but we're going to do a little bit of DFS. We're going to do a little bit of sports book. What's up, Paul Bruno of RotoWire? How you doing this morning, dude?
Everything is great. How about you guys?
We're
great.
hanging in there, dude. We're hanging in there. So I wasn't as dialed into the NHL this weekend like that I typically am, because there was this thing on called the Masters.
The Masters.
But like, what was the biggest storyline this past weekend, especially as we have those frantic finishes. We're getting close to the finish line here in the regular season.
Kings lost their third straight.
Okay,
Well, the
so you've been more dialed
biggest
in than me.
Yeah.
The biggest story was in the mecca of hockey at the downtown Toronto, where Austin Matthews became the fifth guy and the first in the last 30 years, I think, to get 50 goals in 50 games at any point in a season. He's now up to 58 on the season and pulling way ahead, eight ahead of his nearest competitor there. So that was the biggest news on my radar, and I think you'd be hard pressed to come up with something better.
Okay.
All right, so only one game on the slate, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So Jets, Canadians. Who's your captain going to be in this one, Paul? Connor Hellebuck is going to be the most expensive captain, $16,800.
Dang.
Yeah, that's if he plays. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet because he played yesterday, and I know they have the long trek from Ottawa to Montreal. I think you can walk there in a couple of hours. But no, seriously, it's about 200 kilometers, maybe 120 miles.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I was going to say, we do miles here. You say kilometers, and I'm just
Yeah,
like,
we were
what are you
like-
talking about?
I'm looking at an international audience for this show. Anyway, I won't be going to the goaltenders regardless of who's in the nets. The Jets, as I said, they played yesterday, and Samuel Montembeault is going to be pressed into service for the Canadians because Jake Allen hurt himself against the Leafs on Saturday night. So I think instead I'm going to go to one of the big shooters and breaking that down to like Nikolai Ehlers of the Jets, as he's on a tear with 7 goals and 14 points and 49 shots on goal in his last 10 games played. He's costing $14,400. I mean, I choose him over Kyle Connor, who costs $16,200, largely on the basis of that shot disparity. Connor, for his part, only 25 shots on goal in those same 10 contests, even though he's a much better scorer on the season. I'll take the guy who's hot right now. And if you don't like the Winnipeg Jets, take a look at Montreal. The smart pick there has to be Cole Caulfield. He's got 5 goals and 8 points, along with 29 shots on goal, costing only $11,700 tonight.
All right, who else do you need in your lineup? Is there like a stack you could chase here? Is there some value plays you could stuff inside that lineup?
Well, you're going to stack on a single game slate. I think there's only one game tonight, right?
True.
So I think I'm going to highlight the players that I think make the most sense in terms of costing less than your average top guy, but good value tonight. So for the Canadians, Brendan Gallagher is the top option for me. For them, he's only $7,500. And this is a guy who shows up every night. No, Montreal's been eliminated for a long while. In fact, I ordered the mini Stanley Cup to the league for eliminated them last week. So that's on the docket. And he's got 7 points in his last 10 games because this guy's a gamer. He'll play every night like it's the 7th game of the playoffs finals. And so you'll get full value for him at that floor, I think. And then the Jets, Adam Lowry's moved up to a second line scoring role at center. And he's got a couple of strong scoring line mates alongside him. I like his size and physicality in this match. I think it'll pose a problem for the smaller Canadians, and he costs only $8,400 tonight.
All right, let's move it on over to the sports book. Paul, favorite bet for this game tonight?
You know, I think in terms of the sports book, I'm saying that we're going to say that the favorite bet should be not the total goals, because I think you're going to be hard pressed to get to 7 tonight, regardless of the quality of the netminders. I would rather take the Jets on the puck line as a plus 175, giving up a goal and a half, because they're a desperate club, and then you really need to come through with a win tonight. There's more at stake for them, and they'll be motivated.
All right, let's move to some futures here. So again, one game on the slate, if you've heard that before. Austin Matthews, minus 330 to win the Hart Trophy. And is there anything that could possibly happen here where he actually doesn't win it? I see McDavid plus 350, but he would also need 10 goals over the last 9 games or something mind-boggling like that.
Yeah.
You know what? The value is on McDavid, though, at the current prices. I mean, Matthews has become the prohibitive favorite because of the string of performances that he's put together for the last 50 games, and he's kind of created that distance as a strong two-way player, not only the best shooter in hockey, but really a 200-foot game like almost nobody else. And he's really carrying this club on his back right now in a string of really impressive victories against the opposition that he's faced. And he's in a tougher division than McDavid, and yet he's outscored him in terms of the goal scoring by a mile. And even at even strength, he's outscored McDavid all season long. So those are factors that give him the edge in my mind, and it's a substantial one. I don't know that there's anything that McDavid can do to close that gap. I mean, look at the quality of the divisions they play in. The Leafs are in the toughest division in hockey, and you can make the case that McDavid's in the weakest one too.
All right, odds are dead even for Cale Makar and Roman Josi for the Norris Trophy, both at minus 110. So who's the bet here, Paul?
You know what, Jesse? It is a close one, but I think I'm going to give the nod to Roman Josi because he's actually leading his team in scoring and threatening to be the first Blue Liner to score 100 points in a long while. Both defensemen are in a virtual tie when you consider their defensive metrics, so that's out the window. And Makar, while he has 6 more goals, Josi leads Makar by 10 total points on the season. So both are clearly outstanding players, but Makar benefits from the star power around him in Colorado, while in Nashville, you can make the case that Josi is their top gun and the only D-man, as I said, to lead his team in scoring all season.
All right, Paul, your job here is done. Hopefully you have some compatriots to talk with about the NHL tomorrow. You know, maybe AJ decides to show up.
Perhaps.
Tuesday's Pete Day, though, too. Maybe
Yeah.
Pete will be here. All right, dude.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. We're looking forward to seeing you. Have a good rest of your day. We will wrap up the show with some NFL best bets.
How about that?
How to bet the draft, because that's 17 days away.
Yep.
So Jeff and Pierce will join us after this. Also, a little update on their NASCAR picks.
Ooh.
Yeah, sexy.
We'll be right back.
Or
That was funny.
that was always, it's always great.
We're-
Billy's back is ginormous. He has
Yeah.
huge traps and he's super jacked, so it's not a shocker when he makes his way in front of the camera.
Yeah.
We have our NASCAR and F1 guys here to talk football.
Yeah. They're also football guys.
Okay, that's fine too. Jeff, what happened over the weekend with your NASCAR picks?
Because earlier when you were on the show, you were like, "Are we going to talk about how I beat Pierce?" And then you came on and you were like, "Oh, actually,
yeah, I heard Pierce say
seems to
something.
have made a mistake."
I thought Pierce took Alex Bowman this week. I mean, I took Kyle Busch, who was fine. I think he was 7th. Pierce reminded me though. He took Ryan Blaney. He was top 5 again. Pierce got me in NASCAR. I will take a small victory lap because I did take Charles Leclerc over Max Verstappen. But again,
Good.
Pierce remains the NASCAR god. He's even got a YouTube show I forgot about. He's been tweeting it out. You should probably watch it. There's a lot of smart stuff being said. Probably I didn't watch it.
Well, congrats there to your NASCAR pick, Pierce. But also, you referenced like Hideki and the book you were reading about like his back, and then it turns out like Hideki looked pretty good over the weekend. Like I think you nailed that.
Yeah, back pain psychological. But let's
Yep.
get to the NFL picks.
Okay,
Yeah,
that sounds
yeah.
good.
Thank
that
you for
sounds good.
keeping
Thank
us
you,
on
producer
track.
Pierce.
Yeah, we're going to dive into the draft coming up in the next few weeks. But are you guys looking for any value right now before teams like really start to focus on certain players? So just like in general, what's your strategy for betting the draft at this point? And is there a bet that you like?
Yeah.
Derek Stingley just ran a 4:37 40-yard dash at LSU's Pro Day last week.
Wow.
He's plus 275 to be the first cornerback taken. So like any of these catching your eye, Pierce?
Yeah, there's a couple picks I like. Under 2.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round at plus 155. We know quarterbacks usually go in the first round, but this is kind of an unusual year in that the draft class for quarterbacks is pretty weak. So if you take a first-round quarterback, you're overpaying. And the teams that need to overpay, they have other needs. And it would be wiser for them to just take someone else with their first-round pick. And then another one, staying with the quarterback trend, is Malik Willis at plus 1,500 to be the number 3 pick overall. The Texans are not going to take him number 3. But again, the Texans have tons of needs. It would be smart for the Texans to trade down to get multiple picks. And maybe a team that's worried that the Panthers are going to take a quarterback might want to try to jump ahead. And that number 3 pick is an opportunity. It's a long shot at 1,500, but it's something worth considering.
All right, Jeff, what about you? Anything you're like honing in on here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mind that Malik Willis idea. I mean, if a team does take a quarterback early, it'll probably be someone trading up to get Willis, just because, again, he's sort of like the right now the anointed most upside quarterback in the draft, so that makes sense. I'm going to stick with the cornerback theme, and I like that you guys brought it up. Obviously, Derek Stingley Jr. plus 275 to be the first cornerback. Ahmad Sauce Gardner wasn't even really in like the top 4 cornerbacks a couple months ago, but now he is the favorite. That's a big move, though. So you do wonder if maybe his odds have just gotten overinflated. I think Stingley Jr. probably is certainly up there in terms of talent. I wouldn't hate that. I actually like probably my favorite bet on the board for the draft right now. Over 4.5 cornerbacks taken in the first round. It's plus 120. This is a deep cornerback class just in terms of top end talent. There's a lot of guys like being projected to go in the first round. And when you get down in these later rounds, like teams like the Bills, the Patriots, they're all loaded up at the skill positions. What do they need? They need extra depth. They don't want to end up like the Baltimore Ravens last year, who were putting wide receivers in at cornerback. I think over 4.5 cornerbacks in the first round is very reasonable, and you're getting plus money to do it. It's not that huge odds, but I do like it, and that's probably my favorite bet on the board for the draft right now.
I mean, after all the player movement around the AFC West, like trade signings, all that stuff, like there's a lot of talk about this division. And on the DK Sportsbook, this is pretty cool, guys. You can pick teams' exact finish in the division or the order of teams. So a Chargers division win with the Chiefs coming in second is plus 650. So separately, the Broncos to finish third is plus 275. Jeff, how you feel about that? Any other AFC West bets you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, the AFC West is going to be super exciting this year. I mean, we could sit here and literally make a case for each one. I'm going to go with the Broncos, though. I would rather take the Broncos to win this division than the Chargers. I just think that, when it comes down to it, if you're betting against the Chiefs, the second best quarterback in this division is Russell Wilson. And I'm sure like the Chargers fans are just throwing things at their internet screen right now, but I really is the truth for me. And I think with Hackett in there, an offensive coordinator, you're going to see Russell Wilson absolutely unleashed for the first time in his career. So I would rather side with the Broncos in this division than the Chargers right now. I do think it's very close. And I don't even mind the plus 800 for the Broncos to win, Chargers second. And you just fade the Chiefs this year. At some point, this Chiefs dynasty is going to come to an end. They don't have the biggest depth on defense. They've lost their biggest playmaker in the wide receiver core in Tyreek Hill. I think that if you're going to do it, this is the year with Russell Wilson coming in, perhaps just keep catching the Chiefs off guard for a season. So I like the Broncos first. If you're going to go to the straight forecast, Broncos first, Chargers second, plus 800. That's where I would go.
Pierce, what do you want to do here?
Yeah, let's go big. Let's go with Raiders 1, Chargers 2. Both teams were basically playoff teams last year, and just being young teams, we expect them to continue to develop. And they've also made some pretty strong moves throughout free agency. And really, the only thing in their way, it's the Chiefs. That's a big obstacle, but they could be one injury away from sliding back down. Now, who knows how not having Tyreek Hill is going to affect the Chiefs' offense. We did see them struggle last year at the beginning of the season. Remember, we were ready to say this team's over, it's done for, their defense can't get it together. The Chiefs aren't going to be on top forever. They showed some signs of weaknesses last season, and you get really good odds on taking Raiders 1, Chargers 2.
All right, regular season statistical leaders also on the board. Cooper Kupp is plus 700 to repeat as receiving yard leader. Any bets here for passing, rushing, or receiving leaders that you like, Pierce? Guess who is first for most passing yards? You got Tom Brady. He's at plus 700, tied with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think Brady will probably be fine. But if we're looking at receiving, I'm going to take a long shot in DK Metcalf. There's the possibility that Tyler Lockett could get traded. That would leave Metcalf as the lone weapon on the Seattle offense. We don't know what they have at quarterback, but they're likely going to be trailing in most games. That means a lot of value for DK Metcalf at plus 3,000 last time I checked those odds. And then also Amari Cooper going down the board. I think this is going to be an upgraded position for him. He's got Deshaun Watson at quarterback. He's got a solid offensive line. I think the AFC North is weekly going to get into shootouts. And then you've got Nick Chubb is going to require safeties to play closer to the line of scrimmage. He's not going to deal with bracket coverage. Amari Cooper could have a huge bounce back year.
All right, Jeff, any bets for passing, rushing, receiving leaders that you like here?
I mean, if I'm looking at the receiving and just the passing totals, I really think the Raiders' top players are a little bit, there's a little bit of value here. I mean, you're getting Devontae Adams to lead in receiving yards at plus 1,200. I don't mind that at all. I mean, the Raiders are just going to be in shootouts most weeks because they're in the AFC West. They're going to be the underdogs, and that's a good situation for Derek Carr and Devontae Adams because they're going to be throwing late in most games. The Raiders are a decent team. Derek Carr is a decent quarterback. I don't even really hate taking Derek Carr for most passing yards either. Again, we've got Josh McDaniel coming in, an offensive-minded head coach, probably going to be scheming up some good, short pass game for Derek Carr as well to take advantage of. He's plus 1,000 for most passing yards. I don't hate hating up both of those guys and just thinking for this dream offensive season for the two. The Raiders, their win total, whatever, that's another story. Are they actually going to be able to stand up against these other AFC teams? But I think for the player totals, both Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, looking like okay bets in the most receiving and most passing yards.
All right, guys, we are out of time, but it is important to remind everyone that the Hall of Fame game is now available on the DK Sportsbook. Raiders 1-point favorite over the Jaguars right now. That's August 4th.
That's really important.
I know.
Yeah,
Just
thank you so much.
Keep that in mind, Jeff.
All right, guys, Madden
Underdog.
starts.
Huge value on the Jaguars right now.
Yeah, hey, Pierce is a big Raiders guy, but look for the Jags upset.
All right, you guys are great. Madden starts at noon, so make sure you tune into that. We got the slate at 5 p.m. It's going to be Glash and Jeff. That's going to be great. And then the Sweat, of course, will be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.
I'm excited.